savings scheme designed for sale at the supermarket checkout. The government wants lower income groups to put more money aside. Good afternoon. The changes in the tax law on savings will mean that rich savers pay more tax. The other headlines: 5 million patients could be dropped by their NHS dentist unless they pay them a visit within the month. Okay. England's prospects for next summer's World Cup have been dealt a blow. They're not going to be seeded. And going soon, from the cinema near you, an end to the local ads that told you where to eat. Details of a new tax-free savings scheme, which was announced in the budget, have been revealed. The familiar Tessers and Peps will go, but their 7 million investors will be able to reinvest them in the new individual savings account known as an ISA. The ISA is designed to encourage the savings habit, and as an extra incentive there'll be a lottery every month. 50 ISA savers will be picked at random, and they'll each get a prize of £1,000.
I can get these details quickly for you.
Tax-free savings have become big business. Virgin Direct is one of many companies selling personal equity plans. Across the country, more than 7 million people have opened Peps or Tessers, with savings totalling £70 billion. But despite their popularity, the schemes set up by the last government are often seen as being too complicated and favouring the rich.
They're buying it because there's a tax break involved. A small minority are simply saving, and they happen to be saving through a PEP. But it is to the government's disappointment and our own disappointment that the people who really take advantage of PEPs today are the wealthy.
Today, the government minister, who is himself at the centre of a tax avoidance row, announced details of the new tax-free savings scheme for ordinary people. The ISA, which will replace both Tessers and Peps, is aimed at encouraging people on lower incomes to save.
Fairness is at the heart of Labour's tax policies, and fairness is at the centre of this new arrangement we're putting here. Combined with accessibility, combined with the fact they can take the money out when they need it, we believe we've got a flexible and accessible policy.
Interest and investment returns on the new individual savings account will be totally tax-free. Anyone will be able to invest up to £5,000 a year in it. There'll be a lifetime limit of £50,000. In order to encourage people on low incomes, there'll be no minimum on the amount you can save. And you can get at your money any time. It doesn't have to be locked away for years. You won't have to go to your bank to put money into your ISA. The government has asked supermarkets to help out. The plan is that as you pay for your baked beans, you can slip some money into your savings account.
The mechanisms are there. We have 12 million customers going through our tills every week. There is already the ability to take money out of the till and also to put money in through our instant savings account. So we should be able to do it reasonably well, and we welcome this initiative from the government.
The Chancellor, Gordon Brown, has been very keen not to increase taxes on the middle classes. But the new account means that the 750,000 people with savings over £50,000 will pay more tax. That might particularly affect those with pet mortgages and retired people who rely on the tax-free income. Anthony Brown, BBC News.
And with me now is John Whiting, who's head of personal taxation at a major accountants firm. John Whiting, is this, do you think, going to encourage a wider net of people to invest and to save?
Well, clearly that's one of the main aims, that they are trying to encourage people who don't normally save, who are put off going into some sort of formal plan, by making it easy, as we've seen. You know, just chip in when you buy your beans, or instead of buying a scratch card, buy £1 or £10 worth of savings. Now that might appeal to people because equally they can get the money out, but fundamentally, will it really tempt people to save who traditionally simply don't save, who'd rather have it in the back pocket?
Is it a simpler system than the old Tessers and Peps?
Well, it is. There's less formality about it. There's no 5-year plan as there is for the Tessers. As for Peps, of course, there's a certain sort of feeling that Peps are shares, and that's all jolly difficult. So this is just cash. You can really identify with it. So it's trying to say to people, it's dead easy. Just leave your money with us. We'll give you some nice income. We'll give you some tax-free income, and we'll give you a little bonus from the government as well, in terms of little extra bonuses on dividends, perhaps, that come in on your ISA.
Who suffers?
Who suffers? Well, it would appear that a number of people who currently have Peps and Tessers will suffer, because although you can roll your Peps and Tessers into this under the current plans, you can only roll £50,000 worth in. Now, that sounds like quite a handy sum, but there are about 750,000 people who've got more than that in Peps and Tessers, and in October '99 and onwards, that excess money will start coming out and start being taxed in full. So they'll suffer, and arguably there's a little less going into the PEPs and TESAs if you put them into the ISA than is currently the case. So people are perhaps going to get a little less, and of course it's the middle income people who are perhaps going to suffer.
John Whiting, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Dentists have warned that up to 5 million people could be cut from NHS dentist lists unless they re-register before the new year. The new rules will only affect those patients who haven't been to their dentist in the last 15 months.
It's your 6-monthly checkup. Let's have a look around.
30 million patients are currently registered with NHS dentists, but in future that could fall. Although under the old rules, anyone who'd not been to their dentist in 2 years would be deregistered, ministers have now endorsed changes made by the previous Tory government that reduces that period to 15 months.
Being deregistered as a national health patient means that you won't get immediate pain relief from your national health dentist, and you may have to wait several days to get an appointment with your national health dentist. Alternatively, you have to pay privately with a private dentist to actually get pain relief.
The changes could save £20 million. Dentists are paid £5 a year for every adult on their list, even if they don't see them. The government believes if people haven't been to their dentist in the past 15 months, they're unlikely to in the future. But dentist leaders question Labour's commitment to NHS dentistry.
We're not sure what New Labour's agenda is for NHS dentistry. We do have very serious concerns about their attitude to NHS dentistry, but we've yet really to hear what they have to say.
Now, the government is committed to ensuring that patients get access to NHS dentistry in all parts of the country. Now, of course, we recognise that there are a few places where it is difficult to get access, and that's why we've made £9 million available during the course of this year, precisely to plug those gaps.
Most people visit their dentist every 6 to 8 months. However, in the past 2 years, 800,000 people have dropped off dentist lists. Many have gone private. Some fear this move will increase that number. Richard Hannaford, BBC News.
2 firefighters have died in Australia as bushfires rage out of control. Hundreds of fires are burning in New South Wales, and many homes and schools have had to be evacuated in the suburbs of Sydney.
Sydney is fast becoming encircled by flames. The worst of the fires are to the south of the city. The afternoon sky turning black with smoke and ash. 100-degree temperatures and high winds fanned the fires, pushing them closer to homes than anyone had expected. Thousands were evacuated as the flames closed in.
All residents, please evacuate and attend the Meadows Marketplace, thank you.
In the heat and panic of the moment, some families became separated.
The satellite's locked down there. They're at the back of this house here.
The last time Sydney burnt was 3 years ago. It's not as serious yet, but the authorities fear it could easily get worse. Army firefighters have been drafted in, but several homes have already been destroyed.
We can only try, but she's coming up pretty quick and we've not got enough trucks, but you can see how many houses are leaving now.
Around the state of New South Wales, 400 separate bushfires are now burning. The emergency services admit more than half are out of control. Near the city of Lithgow, 2 firemen were killed when a sudden rush of wind blew the flames up through the valley, leaving them with no escape. Helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft have been flying non-stop, dousing the flames with water laced with special fire-retarding chemicals. Michael Peshart, BBC News, Sydney.
Local authorities will hear later today how much money they'll get from the government towards the cost of services next year. Despite an extra £1 billion for education, councils are warning that they need more to pay for other key services. They've asked the government to relax the rules which cap their spending so they can raise extra funds from council taxes.
When Oxfordshire's education budget was cut because of capping, parents at this school raised or pledged £14,000 to help stop any teacher redundancies. Some are still paying.
Well, because we run our own business and I'm short of time, I just give a cash donation each month to the school to help.
Do you think it's right that you should have to do that?
No, I think it's entirely wrong. But to keep the standard of education for our children, it's got to be done.
You know, it should be supplied. You shouldn't have to sort of pay extra money. But if that's the way you've got to do it, that's the way you've got to do it.
The head teacher, who was staggered by their generosity, hopes that some of the extra government money going into schools next year will find its way into his budget and end the need for any more begging letters to parents.
If this money is diverted to other services, there will be uproar from parents and from teachers, from heads and from governors, because quite clearly we are trying to run a service at a time when everybody is so keen to, desperately keen to raise standards. We need the investment to ensure that that really does happen.
But like other councils, Oxfordshire is facing severe pressures in its other services. It says it may have to close up to 30 libraries. And in social services, day centres like this one for children with disabilities may also have to go.
And we're now down to a level of spending in many areas which is up against the legal duty to provide services. And we are currently being threatened with legal action in the realm of social services and also now in the libraries.
Though few councils are in such dire straits as Oxfordshire, local government leaders say unless the government relax capping limits, some of the money earmarked for schools will have to go to other services. Ministers say today's settlement will be tough but fair.
Today we are being as generous as we possibly can be, but we also know the pressures that are on people up and down the country who do not want to see their individual tax bills rise without control.
Even so, council tax bills look like increasing by at least 7% next year, though today Liberal Democrats claimed it will be closer to 10%, by far the biggest rise since the poll tax was abolished. John Andrew, BBC News.
England's path to possible glory in next year's World Cup in France has been made more difficult. Football's ruling body FIFA excluded the team from the 8 top-seeded countries for the tournament. It means England might have to face a top-ranked opponent like Brazil or Germany in their opening matches. The announcement was made within the last hour in Marseille. Our sports correspondent Neil Bennett is there.
Well, when the seedings were announced here in Marseille this morning, slightly greater emphasis was placed on performance in the last 3 World Cups rather than current world rankings. And that meant that England, like Scotland, were not classed among the top 8 countries in the world and will therefore not be seeded.
Preparations are underway for the draw itself in Marseille's Stade Velodrome. It's one of 10 grounds where the tournament will be played next summer, starting on June the 10th and with the final in Paris on July the 12th. 32 nations will go into Thursday's draw for the biggest World Cup ever. Apart from France, the hosts, and Brazil, the champions, 6 teams will be seeded.
We have Germany, Italy, Spain, Argentina, Romania and the Netherlands, which have been designated seeded teams.
England, who will return to the hotel in Nantes they stayed at during Le Tournoi this summer, had hoped to be among the seeds, but won't be surprised by today's announcement. In any case, it won't be so much of an advantage in this World Cup. All the teams will have to leave their comfortable headquarters at some stage to play matches in other parts of France. And at least England can be assured of pleasant and familiar surroundings on the days they're not playing or travelling.
Well, FIFA, the world governing body, have also been discussing this week the trouble in the England and Italy qualifying match in Rome in October. All they've said about that so far is that they've identified certain problems with the ticketing for the game and that they're still investigating the matter. Edward, back to you in London.
Neil, thanks very much indeed. And the time is 14 minutes past 1. Later in the programme, a new fund to help Holocaust survivors get back their stolen gold. And is this electric car the stuff of Californian dreams? After acrimonious scenes in court, the 8-year marriage of Earl and Countess Spencer will end tomorrow in Cape Town in South Africa. The sudden halt to the case came after the couple's legal teams agreed overnight on the settlement the Countess will receive. It's thought to include a £2 million clean break payment.
Negotiations had got markedly simpler around Cape Town's High Court this morning. With the Spencer case over, the only thing left to talk about was a hole in the ground. Last night it was very different. Lawyers for both sides emerged after hours spent in discussion. The smiles told the changed story, most of it anyway.
Can you say anything about the financial settlement?
Whatever there is in the statement.
It's all here. Everything is here.
It wasn't. The precise terms thought to involve a one-off payment to Victoria Spencer of around £2.5 million and not being publicised. What is a new mood of harmony between the couple, who are now withdrawing all allegations against each other. Their divorce could now take place as early as tomorrow, which means the media attention Charles Spencer in particular has had to cope with will finally start to let up. An aide of his was clearly relieved.
Earl Spencer's delighted that the events of the last week have been brought to a conclusion, and that for the sake of the children they can both move on to their future lives, and that all the allegations against him have been withdrawn.
This has clearly been an exceptionally painful case both for Charles and Victoria Spencer. In the end, it's difficult to resist the conclusion that the intense media coverage forced them both to settle early, and that Charles Spencer, in the face of multiple attacks on his reputation, had most reasons to compromise. Jeremy Vine, BBC News, Cape Town.
The racing driver Damon Hill has helped launch the latest campaign to remind you not to drink and drive. When you're out enjoying yourself this Christmas season, the message is have none for the road. This year the government is targeting young drivers with TV and radio advertisements showing a group who wrongly believe they can control cars after drinking. Britain is setting up an international fund to help Holocaust victims to reclaim gold stolen from them by the Nazis. The Foreign Secretary Robin Cook said Britain will contribute £1 million to the fund. He made the announcement at the opening of the London Conference on Nazi Gold.
They've come from Albania and Argentina, the Ukraine and Uruguay. 240 delegates gathered to shed light on one of the murkiest episodes in history. Britain's Foreign Secretary Robin Cook, in his keynote speech, confirmed that a new international fund had been opened to benefit survivors.
As the country that has taken the lead in setting up the fund, it is right that Britain should start the fund going. I am therefore pleased to announce that Britain will be contributing £1 million to the start-up of the fund.
The Swiss banks have been the targets of sustained criticism in recent years. They're now facing pressure to put up more cash for Holocaust victims. The conference was told that America is giving $4 million immediately, with another $25 million promised.
We're doing so in a way which extends both a moral gesture and a material contribution to justice, however little and late, for Holocaust survivors.
The presence here of former slave laborers gave the gesture real meaning.
We worked in a factory where we slept by the machines. We worked tremendously long hours on starvation ration. If people were too weak, they were shot, new ones were brought in. I think this has to be recognized as a fact. We must be rewarded, we must be paid and apologized to.
What happened to the gold stolen from the Nazis' victims is one of the key questions for this conference. One historian said here that it would take another 10 years to unravel all the remaining secrets of the Nazi gold. And by that time, most of the dwindling band of Holocaust survivors will be dead. John Silverman, BBC News at Lancaster House.
Annie Linsell, who went to the High Court to get permission to receive pain-relieving drugs which might shorten her life, has died. She suffered from motor neuron disease.
Annie Linsell fought a long-term battle against motor neuron disease, which left her unable to walk or feed herself properly. She mounted a legal case arguing that she should have the right to receive pain-relieving drugs, even though they may shorten her life. The case went to the High Court in October, but it was stopped halfway through when all parties agreed that she could have the drugs without court ruling. Although it produced no legal precedent, the case did clear up the confusion about the treatment a doctor can give to terminally ill people who fear a loss of dignity. Her physical and legal struggle means that for many other patients in future, doctors can administer drugs not just to relieve physical pain, but also distress without breaking the law. Duncan Kennedy, BBC News.
Welsh farmers have again stopped lorries carrying Irish beef from entering the country. At the port of Fishguard last night, hundreds of farmers picketed lorries coming off a ferry from Rosslare. 6 lorries were forced to return to Ireland. The farmers are protesting about cheap beef imports. At least 61 miners have been killed and a further 6 are still missing after an explosion at a mine in Russia. It's thought methane gas exploded in the mine during the night in the Siberian city of Novokuznetsk. Specialist teams are still searching for survivors. Safety is known to have deteriorated in Russian mines in recent years. Controversial plans to strip peat from protected parts of the Yorkshire moors are at this moment being discussed at a meeting of the government's conservation watchdog, English Nature. Environmentalists say the peatland on Thorn and Hatfield moors supports many endangered plant and animal species, and they're worried that stripping the peat out will do permanent damage.
It's a Yorkshire moorland wilderness with an international reputation for its unique flora and fauna. 5,000 years of natural history on the Thorn peatland includes rare and endangered fungi, lichens and mosses. But the acres of lowland bog are shared with a commercial peat extraction company, and conservationists claim that any change to the site's status will threaten the wetland wildlife. English Nature, who manage the reserve, insist the peat exploitation won't be allowed to cause permanent damage.
50% of Thorn Moors is coming back to us very rapidly. We get hundreds of acres every year as it comes out of milling. We've flooded that land. It's now got the peat-forming species coming back on it, and thanks to our restoration work is actually recolonizing as peatland.
But conservationists threaten legal action to preserve the present status of the moor for future generations.
They support thousands of species of insect, butterflies, dragonflies, beetles, some of which are found nowhere else but on these moors. We've also got a whole range of plants, the fungi, the lichen, the mosses.
The peat, mostly sold abroad as soil conditioner, is a multi-million-pound business. Only a government change of legislation could stop the commerce totally and preserve peatlands described by the Prince of Wales as precious living landscapes. John Thorne, BBC News, Thorn Moors.
The former wrestler Big Daddy has died 2 months after suffering a stroke. He was 60. The former miner, whose real name was Shirley Crabtree, was a wrestler for more than 30 years. He was one of the sport's biggest attractions during its television heyday, with millions of people tuning in to see his bouts. Politicians are continuing to debate global warming at the Kyoto conference in Japan. One of the most controversial issues is what to do with the oil-burning car. In the first of two reports from our industry correspondent, we look at California, where fast, pollution-free electric vehicles are available, but sales are low.
Los Angeles is the world's car capital, with more automobiles than people. One of the world's mega cities, they live and breathe motor vehicles, with more official bad smog days than any other American city. Exactly a year ago, General Motors put the world's first purpose-built electric car on the California market. It's an engineering triumph with fast, silent acceleration.
Well, it certainly isn't a fringe fad thing. It's a very important strategic initiative towards cleaner and more efficient transportation.
Californians have been slow to take the cars, which now sit on garage forecourts, only a few hundred driven. It's a slow process. A network of recharging stations is yet to be built.
We need electric cars. Right now, they're the only kind of cars that are available on the market that are just about pollution-free. But the problem is we need for them to have a longer range, and we need the price to come down.
California is an oil producer, oil wells inside orange groves. And oil also lobbies against non-oil cleaner cars.
The thing about California, as nowhere else, is that it's a matter of balancing different forces within the market. There are the car companies wanting to produce petrol engines and green cars, and the oil companies, and above all, an extreme mistrust of government.
Wayne King is a concerned citizen against any public funds to promote alternatives to petrol. Every fortnight, his group reviews progress in what's been a successful campaign against promoting electric cars.
I don't think it's up to the government to do the behavior modification to get that done. Now, if people choose to get out of the cars as a free will, that's fine. They should do that. But to have the government subsidize every little piece of something that comes along that might work is going to drain us dry.
The state's Air Resources Board polices fumes. It's ruled that 10% of cars sold must be electric. But will people buy without state help? California has got cleaner with better petrol engines. The hard bit is getting further cuts in fumes. Californians and their cars will not be parted. Stephen Evans, BBC News, Los Angeles.
You either love them or endure them. Those cinema ads which urge you to dash round to your local curry house or Chinese restaurant just 3 steps away from this cinema. The company that makes the ads has decided that they've passed their sell-by date and is to consign them to the dustbin. Nick Hyam reflects on this piece of cinematic history.
In the golden days of cinema, they were as much a part of a trip to the pictures as the queue for tickets or canoodling in the back row. Those ads for local businesses which stuck the name and phone number onto 30 seconds of standard footage. Ads like this.
I'm sick to death of this place. What I could do with is one of those nice posh kitchens like what you see on the telly. It could change my life. And there was no need to break the piggy bank.
But in the era of the modern multiplex cinema, the traditional local ads are being replaced by slides because they're cheaper.
The cost of producing ads is what is really the problem. Therefore, finding a more cost-efficient production mechanism for producing local advertising is our way of developing an insurance policy for small business.
Local businesses might have been glad once of an opportunity like this, not anymore, according to the man who runs the restaurant featured in this ad.
It's been totally non-effective, even by offering a 50% reduction on customers' bills. No customers walk through that door.
Today's national cinema ads are glossy and professional. The local commercials were ineffective, but their amateurism was part of the charm.
I used to like them because they really were not slick. They were not very professional. They were just the sort of thing which reminded you more of the old days than now, and perhaps one would be rather nostalgic to see them go.
So cinemas lose one of their last links with the Fleetbits of the past, though no local restaurant was ever quite as exotic as this in reality. Nick Hyam, BBC News.
And at 27 minutes past 1, the main news again. A new tax-free savings scheme has been announced. It's aimed at lower income groups. And 5 million patients face being dropped by their national health dentists unless they visit them in the next month. That's all this Tuesday lunchtime. From the 1 o'clock news, good afternoon.
You haven't been in contact.
If she's gone missing, how could have I been in contact with her?